The strange arrival. The alien city of Kairos was never quiet, but today the noise felt different, uneasy, like the whole place was waiting for something to happen. The markets were full, the air thick with the smell of burning oils and strange spices. Alien voices mixed in the air, but the chatter slowed as eyes turned toward the human who had just stepped through the outer gate. She walked with steady steps, not rushing, not afraid, but not bold either. Her clothes were simple, nothing to stand out, yet the way the crowd watched her made her feel like a shadow under the suns. The reason was clear enough. At her heels padded 4 small cubs, creatures with fur like silver fire and eyes like molten gold. The cubs didn't stumble. They didn't wander. They moved as one, keeping close to her side. Sometimes they brushed against her leg. Sometimes they looked up as if waiting for her signal. But she gave none. She simply walked, and they followed. Whispers spread through the crowd, harsh and sharp in the alien tongue. No cubs followed strangers, not even their own kind. They were wild, untamed, feared even. The cubs of Kairos were known for claw and fang, for their refusal to obey. Yet here they were, walking behind a human woman as if she were their mother. At the gates of the inner district stood the city's security guards, tall armored figures with long spears that pulsed faint blue at the tips. They had been watching since she appeared. Their eyes narrowed as she drew closer. Their leader, a scarred officer with black plates on his shoulders, stepped forward and raised a hand. "Stop," he ordered. His voice cut through the murmurs. The crowd went silent. Even the cubs halted, pressing close to the woman's legs. The officers, eyes fixed on them first, then on her. "Why are they following you, human?" She tilted her head slightly, calm, almost too calm. She didn't answer right away. She looked down at the cubs, who stared back at her, tails swishing. Then she raised her eyes to the officer. "They walk where they want," she said softly. Her words carried, not loud but clear enough that the silence made them heavy. The officer frowned. His grip tightened on the spear. Behind him, the guard shifted uneasily. The cubs' eyes glowed faint in the light, and their bodies seemed tense, protective. The officer took a step closer, his shadow falling over her. "Do not play with me," he snapped. "These creatures do not obey. They attack, they scatter, they kill without command, and yet they follow you into our streets. Do not think we will let this pass. Tell me, what have you done to them?" The crowd leaned in, curious, afraid, hungry for an answer. Even the marketplace traders who had frozen in their stalls left their goods to watch. Every pair of alien eyes was on her. Every breath seemed to hang waiting. She said nothing. Her silence burned hotter than any words. She let it stretch, long enough that the officer's patience cracked. He gestured sharply, and 2 guards moved forward. Their spears hummed brighter as they closed in on her. The cubs moved instantly, stepping in front of her with their small but sharp teeth bared. A low growl rumbled from their throats. The guards froze, startled. The crowd gasped. Never before had cubs protected anyone, not even their own trainers. Not like this. The officer's face darkened. He waved the guards back, not from mercy, but from caution. His eyes narrowed at the human. He could feel the eyes of the city council already judging him. He could not allow weakness. "You will come with us," he said coldly. "Until the council has answers, you are not free to walk our streets, and neither are your beasts." The woman looked at him, her expression unreadable. Then she glanced at the cubs and back at him. Slowly she nodded. "I will come," she said. "But understand something, officer." Her voice grew harder. "They are not my beasts." Her words made the officer pause, made the crowd murmur louder, but before he could press her again, she added, her tone final, "They don't follow. They choose." The officer's jaw tightened. His fingers twitched on the spear shaft, but he said nothing. Behind him, the guards exchanged uneasy glances. The crowd whispered louder. The cubs stayed close to her, unshaken, unafraid, and as the guards surrounded her, escorting her toward the high gates of the council chamber, the people of Kairos realized they had just witnessed something impossible. The questioned human, Council chamber of Kairos was built like a fortress. Stone arches rose high overhead. Banners of deep crimson hung heavy on the walls, and every step echoed like thunder. The woman walked with the guards at her sides, the cubs padding close behind. Their small claws clicked softly against the polished floor. Their golden eyes glowed faintly in the shadows. Every guard kept glancing at them. Some gripped their spears tighter, others muttered under their breath. None had ever seen cubs walk. Inside the council hall, this place was for leaders, rulers, and trials, not for beasts. At the far end sat the High Council of Kairos, 5 figures cloaked in dark robes. Their faces were sharp, their horns gilded, their eyes cold. They ruled not just the city but the entire region. The officer who had stopped her stood to the side, waiting, his jaw tense. The eldest counselor raised a hand. His voice was dry, commanding, "Human, you stand before us accused of breaking the natural law of our kind. You have caused the cubs to follow you as though bound. Speak, what trick have you used?" The woman did not bow. She simply stood, calm, her hands by her side. The cubs shifted, pressing near her legs as though sensing the weight of the moment. She met the elder's stare without fear. "I used no trick," she said. Her voice carried. Across the chamber, steady. "I did nothing but walk. They followed, that is all." The counselors exchanged glances. The crowd of lesser officials and servants murmured. The officer stepped forward, pointing sharply at the cubs. "Lies," he barked. "No one controls them, not even our trainers. They tear apart those who try. Look at them, look how they guard her. If this is not control, what is it?" The cubs growled at his raised hand. Their fangs glinted, low rumbling filled the chamber. The officer froze mid-gesture, his eyes widening before he stepped back, embarrassed by his own fear. The murmurs grew louder. Another counselor, younger and colder, leaned forward. "Then answer this, why would they follow you, human? You are not of us. You are not of their blood. No cub has ever chosen one outside our kind." The woman looked down at the cubs. They looked back at her, their golden eyes bright with trust. She slowly raised her gaze back to the council. "Maybe it is not about blood," she said. "Maybe it is about choice." The chamber grew tense. The words echoed as though the walls themselves repeated them. The elders shifted uncomfortably. The officer's teeth clenched. He hated her calm. Hated her defiance. The eldest counselor slammed his staff on the ground. "Enough riddles. You will be tested. If they truly choose you, then it will be seen. If you lie, the truth will burn it out." The woman nodded once. "So be it." The officer stepped forward again, eager. "I recommend immediate trial. Bring the stones of binding. Place her in the circle. If she has bent them with tricks, the ritual will break it." Gasps filled the chamber. The stones of binding were ancient, sacred. They were used only when truth was in question. They revealed loyalty and tore apart false bonds. The woman did not flinch. She only reached a hand to her side, letting one cub nudge against her palm. The soft growl from its throat was not anger. It was promise. The council rose, robes sweeping the ground, their eyes cold but burning with curiosity. The eldest pointed toward the ritual chamber beyond. "The hall." "Then let it be done," he said. "If they choose her, we will see it with our own eyes." The guards surrounded her again, but this time their steps were unsure. Every glance at the cubs carried both fear and respect. The officer's face twisted into a grim smile. He wanted her broken, wanted to see the cubs tear away from her side. He was certain it would happen, but the woman walked steady, each step calm, each breath slow, as if she already knew the outcome. The cubs followed without hesitation. Their tails lifted, their eyes fierce. Their small bodies moved like shadows of fire at her heels, and for the first time in years, the council chamber of Kairos trembled. Not from weapons or war, but from the silence of a truth no one was ready to face. The council's suspicion. The ritual chamber lay beneath the council hall, carved from black stone that glimmered faintly in the torchlight. The air was cold, dry, and heavy, as though the walls themselves held centuries of secrets. At the center stood the circle of binding, wide and marked with glowing runes that pulsed like a heartbeat. The woman was led inside by guards, the cubs padding at her side. Their golden eyes darted around the chamber but never left her for long. They brushed against her legs, their growls low, protective. The officer stood near the edge of the circle, his spear gripped tight. His eyes burned with hunger. He wanted, her exposed, wanted to see the moment her calm mask cracked. The eldest counselor raised his staff. The stones of binding will decide. If the cubs are forced, the runes will burn and they will flee. If they choose freely, the circle will remain unbroken. The woman said nothing. She only looked down at the cubs. Her calm expression was unchanged. But deep in her chest, her heart beat hard. She knew this was not a game. These cubs trusted her, but would they prove it under the eyes of all? The guards gestured for her to step into the circle. The runes flared brighter as she crossed the line. Her body tingled as if the air had turned to fire around her. The cubs hesitated for a breath at the edge, their ears twitching, their paws pressed against the glowing marks. The onlookers held their breath. Then, one by one, the cubs stepped across, padding into the circle as though nothing bound them. They sat at her feet, tails curled around them. Their golden eyes shone like small suns in the darkness. A murmur swept the chamber. It was impossible. The circle should have driven them back if she controlled them with trickery. Yet the runes stayed steady, glowing a calm blue. The officer spat. This proves nothing. The creatures are confused. They don't understand. One of the younger counselors leaned forward. Then let the test go further. Let another call. To them, if they are free, they will choose differently. The eldest nodded slowly. Yes, bring forth the trainer. The heavy doors opened, and an elder trainer of the cubs' kind entered. His body was scarred from years of raising wild beasts. His voice was deep, commanding. Come, he said, stretching his hand toward the cubs. His words carried weight, the kind that bent animals' will. The cubs turned their heads. They blinked, listening, but none moved. Instead, they leaned closer to the woman, their tails flicked, their eyes narrowed. One even growled at the trainer's command. Gasps echoed. The trainer's face went pale. He barked louder. Come, obey! His voice shook the chamber. The runes pulsed sharply as though testing the cubs' resolve. But still they did not move. Instead, the smallest cub rose, walked to the woman, and pressed its head against her leg. The glow around the circle softened. Steady as stone, the trainer stumbled back. Impossible, he whispered. His pride shattered. The officer's face twisted with rage. He slammed the butt of his spear against the stone. This is witchcraft. No human can earn such loyalty. They are bound by some hidden power. The eldest counselor's eyes narrowed, his voice cut through the noise. Perhaps not witchcraft, perhaps something else. Something we do not understand. The woman finally spoke, her voice calm. I saved them. Nothing more. I found them in the wild, starving, hunted. I gave them water, food, shelter. I asked nothing in return. She placed her hand gently on the smallest cub's back. They are not mine. They are themselves. But they chose to stay. Her words echoed in the chamber, heavy, simple, undeniable. The cubs pressed closer, their loyalty clear in every motion. The younger counselor hissed, If they can choose humans, what else will they choose? What if others follow her kind? What if the balance shifts? Suspicion filled the chamber like smoke. The counselors whispered among themselves, their voices sharp, fearful. Some spoke of danger, others of opportunity. The officer's glare never left her. His pride demanded she fall. His fear demanded she be destroyed. The eldest counselor raised his staff again. This trial proves they are not forced, they have chosen. But what this means, we must decide. His gaze fixed on the woman. Until then, you are not free to leave. You will remain under watch. For the safety of all, the guards closed in again, their movements careful, hesitant. Their eyes flicked nervously at the cubs who growled low but did not attack. The woman stood tall, calm as ever. She had faced worse than suspicion, but as the cubs pressed against her legs, she knew the real danger was only beginning, for in the eyes of the council burned not just suspicion, but fear. and fear in the hands of rulers was always the beginning of something darker. The test of truth. The Council of Kairos did not act in secret for long. Word of the strange human, and the cubs spread through the city faster than fire in dry grass. By dawn, the marketplace was buzzing. By midday, the entire city pressed toward the Grand Square. Everyone wanted to see the trial. The Grand Square was built for spectacle, a wide circle of stone surrounded by tiered steps where thousands could gather. At the center stood the trial ring, marked with ancient carvings that glowed with pale blue light. It was said the stones would expose lies. They had done so for centuries. The woman stood inside the ring, her figure calm, her face steady. The cubs padded at her feet, brushing against her legs. Their golden eyes scanned the crowd, their fur shimmered in the sunlight. Even now, their closeness unsettled the people. High above, on a raised platform, the council sat in shadowed thrones. The officer stood nearby, spear in hand. His face carried a grim smile. He believed the crowd would see her exposed. The eldest counselor rose, his voice booming. "People of Kairos, you gather today to witness truth. A human claims no power, no trick, yet the cubs follow her. You know this is against all nature, against all law. Today the stones will reveal what she hides." The crowd murmured. Some shouted curses. Others cried warnings. But all eyes stayed fixed on the woman and the cubs. A heavy drumbeat began, deep and slow. The trial of choice was starting. The woman lowered her hand, letting it brush lightly against the smallest cub. She whispered softly, though her words were drowned in the noise. The cubs sat around her, unshaken, as the runes of the trial ring flared brighter. The officer raised his spear toward the crowd, his voice cutting through. "If these creatures are free, let them prove it. Let them choose before all." The trainer who had failed in the chamber stepped forward again, his face hardened from humiliation. He spread his arms wide and called out, "Cubs of Kairos, hear your own. Leave her, return to your blood." The crowd roared, leaning forward, waiting. The cubs twitched their ears. They turned their golden eyes toward him. The runes pulsed as though urging them forward, but they did not move. Instead, one cub stepped closer to the woman, pressing against her leg. The others followed, forming a small wall around her. Their growls rolled low and steady. Gasps exploded across the square. The trainer's face drained of color. He shouted again, voice cracking with anger, "Obey me! You are ours!" The cubs bared their teeth, their growls louder now. The runes glowed hotter but did not crack. The people whispered in disbelief. Some covered their mouths, others pointed, shaking their heads. The eldest counselor raised his staff, silencing the square. "This is not enough," he declared. "The trial demands choice, not stubbornness. Bring the challengers." From the far side of the ring, 3 trained warriors stepped forward. Each carried food, toys, and shiny lures, things cubs could never resist. The crowd murmured in approval. Surely now the cubs would leave the human. Surely instinct would betray her. The first warrior set down a bowl of steaming meat. The second rolled out a glittering orb. The third whistled sharply, a sound cubs were trained to obey. The cubs glanced. Their noses twitched at the scent. Their eyes flicked to the shiny orb. For a heartbeat, the square held its breath. The officer smiled, certain the moment had come. But the cubs turned their heads back to the woman. Their tails flicked, dismissing the temptations. One cub growled at the whistle, refusing to move. Then, as if to seal the truth, the largest cub padded forward, pressing its forehead against the woman's knee. The runes flared white, not in warning, but in recognition. The circle of stone thrummed with ancient approval. The crowd erupted, some cheered, some cried out in fear. The officer's face twisted, rage burning in his eyes. He raised his spear. "This is a trick. They must be bound by forbidden means. She lies before you all." But his words were drowned. The people had seen it with their own eyes. The cubs had chosen. They had rejected food, toys, commands, everything. The eldest counselor's staff struck the ground. "Silence!" he roared. His voice shook the square. "The truth is revealed. These cubs follow by choice, not force. The woman said nothing. She only looked down at the cubs, who stared back at her with steady golden eyes. The bond between them was undeniable, but even as the council admitted truth, fear spread like a shadow across the square. Whispers hissed through the crowd. If cubs could choose a human, what else could choose humanity? What would this mean for the balance of the galaxy? The officer's hand trembled on his spear. His rage was no longer just anger, it was fear, and fear, he knew, demanded action. The trial had ended, but the war of choices had only just begun. The hidden bond. The trial in the grand square ended, but the silence that followed was heavier than the roar of the crowd. The people had seen it, cubs rejecting every lure, every command, to stay beside the human. The truth was undeniable, yet the truth did not bring peace. The woman was taken, back inside the council chamber. The cubs followed close, tails low but steady. They sensed the tension in the air, the weight pressing down on their chosen companion. The eldest counselor sat with his hands pressed together, his eyes sharp. "You will speak now," he said. "No riddles, no silence. Tell us, human, why do they follow you? Why do they choose you?" The officer stood nearby, his jaw clenched. His spear glowed faintly in his grip. His eyes burned with the hunger of a man who could not accept what he had seen. The woman drew a breath, calm as always. Her gaze swept the room before she lowered it to the cubs gathered at her feet. The smallest pressed against her boot. The largest sat tall, watching the council with fierce golden eyes. "I found them in the wild," she said simply, her voice soft but every word carried. "They were starving, weak, surrounded by hunters. I could have left them. I could have turned away. But I didn't." Her eyes flicked toward the officer, then back to the council. "I fought the hunters off. With nothing but fire and stone. I carried the cubs in my arms. I gave them water from my own hands. I kept them alive when even their own kind had abandoned them." The chamber stirred, murmurs rising like a restless tide. A counselor narrowed his eyes. "You risked your life for beasts?" The woman nodded. "Not beasts," she corrected. "Lives small and fragile, but still lives." She ran her hand along the smallest cub's back. Its fur shimmered under her touch. "I asked nothing of them. Not loyalty, not obedience, but they stayed. They stayed because they chose to." The eldest counselor's face was unreadable. His eyes were deep pools of thought. The younger counselor, sharp and cold, hissed, "Do you not see the danger? If they can choose her, what will others choose? What if the loyalty of our cubs, our beasts, our warriors can be given away so freely? This is corruption." The officer slammed the butt of his spear on the stone, his voice harsh. "This human is dangerous. She bends what cannot be bent. She threatens our order, our way. If cubs will follow her, then others will too. Soon our people will see her as something more than she is. She must be ended before it spreads." The cubs growled, sharp and low, their eyes fixed on the officer, their claws scraped against the floor. The sound made the guards shift uneasily. The woman's voice cut through the tension, steady but cold. "You call me dangerous because I showed kindness. If compassion is danger, then perhaps you should fear yourselves." The chamber froze at her words. For a moment no one spoke. The officer's face twisted with fury, but even he dared not strike, not with the cubs guarding her every movement. The eldest counselor raised a hand, silencing the argument. His voice was grave. "The bond is real. The cubs have chosen. But this choice is not without consequence. Our laws have no place for such a thing, and our people will not rest easy." The woman tilted her head, calm but firm. "Then perhaps it is time your laws changed." Her words echoed like a blow. The counselor stiffened. The officer's knuckles whitened on his spear. The chamber was no longer just a trial. It was a battlefield of ideas. Outside, the sound of the city grew restless. The people had not gone home quietly. Rumors raced through the streets. Some whispered that the human had magic. Others said, the cubs saw something in her that no one else could. Children spoke of her with awe. Traders muttered with unease. Warriors clenched their fists in anger. And in the midst of it all, the woman sat calm, surrounded by the cubs, their golden eyes blazing like embers in the dark. The eldest counselor finally spoke again. "You will remain under guard until a decision is reached," he said. "But know this. Your presence here has changed something we cannot yet name." The officer leaned forward, his voice like venom. "Changed for the worse." The woman said nothing, but the cubs growled again, louder this time. The sound made even the guards step back. The council rose, ending the session. The heavy doors slammed shut. The chamber emptied, leaving the woman and her cubs under watch. Dadar lowered her hand, touching the head of the smallest. The cub leaned into her palm, soft and trusting, and in that quiet moment, she knew what the council feared most. It was not her. It was the bond. Because once a bond like this was seen, it could not be unseen. The rising tension. The chamber emptied, but the weight of the trial clung to the city like a storm that refused to break. The woman was placed under guard in a high stone tower overlooking the market. From its narrow windows, she could hear the voices of the people below. Their words carried both wonder and dread. "Did you see it? The cubs chose her. They stood against the trainer himself. She is dangerous. She twists nature. She should be cast out before it spreads. No, it is a sign. Maybe the humans are not what we thought." The cubs stayed close, curled near her feet, but their ears flicked at every sound. They were restless, sensing the tension in the air. The largest paced the room, growling whenever a guard passed too close to the door. Down in the council hall, arguments raged. The younger counselor struck his hand against the table. "She must be destroyed. If cubs can choose her, then our beasts, our soldiers, our people may follow. Do you not see? This is the end of order." Another counselor, older and weary, shook his head. "Or perhaps it is the beginning of something better. Compassion earned loyalty where fear and force failed. Is that not worth considering?" The officer stood at the center of the chamber, his voice sharp as steel. "You speak of compassion as if it were strength, but it is weakness. She weakens them. She makes them soft. If we allow this human to live, we invite collapse." The eldest counselor leaned back in his throne, his fingers tapping the armrest. "And if we kill her, what message will it send when our people saw the cubs choose freely? Will they not ask why we destroy what they witnessed with their own eyes?" The chamber fell into uneasy silence. The officer's jaw tightened. He knew the council was divided, and division meant delay. He could not allow delay. He needed action. That night, as the city dimmed under the twin moons, the officer climbed the tower steps with 2 trusted soldiers at his side. The guards outside her chamber bowed to him, letting him pass without question. Inside, the woman rose slowly as the door creaked open. The cubs stirred, their golden eyes gleaming in the moonlight, low growls filling the room. The officer stepped in, his spear glowing faint blue. His expression was hard, but his voice carried false calm. "Human, the council hesitates, but hesitation is weakness. I will not wait for weakness to destroy us." The woman tilted her head, saying nothing. The cubs moved closer, forming a circle around her legs, their claws scratched lightly against the stone floor. "You have bent them," the officer continued. "Whether by trick or chance, it does not matter. You are a threat to everything we are. I will end it here and now before your poison spreads." He raised his spear, the blue glow brightening. The cubs snarled, their bodies tense. The largest lowered its head, ready to leap. The woman's voice cut through the tension, calm and steady. "You fear me because I did not take their loyalty. I earned it. You cannot destroy that with your weapon." The officer's eyes flashed with fury. "Then I will destroy you." He stepped forward, but before the spear could strike, the cubs lunged. Their growls exploded into the chamber, claws flashing, teeth bared. The officer stumbled back as one cub slammed into his arm, knocking the spear aside. The soldiers at his back raised their blades, but the cubs snapped at their heels, driving them to the wall. The woman stood still, unflinching, her eyes locked on the officer. "You see?" she said softly. "They are not commanded. They are not forced. They choose. Even now, they choose." The officer's breath came fast. His pride burned as much as his fear. He had expected weakness, But he had found strength, a strength not built on power, but on trust. Outside, the commotion echoed through the streets. The people stirred, lanterns lit, voices rose, guards rushed toward the tower. Some shouted for order, others whispered what they had already feared, that the officer had moved against her in secret. The eldest counselor stood at the balcony of the hall, watching the unrest spread. His face tightened. He knew the truth. The moment had come when choice could no longer be contained. Back in the tower, the officer staggered to his feet, his spear glowing faintly again. His voice was hoarse, furious. "If they will not leave you, then they will die with you." The cubs growled louder, standing their ground. The woman's eyes narrowed, calm but cold, and in that instant the chamber felt like the edge of a blade, balanced between peace and blood. The choice that shook them all. The tower chamber shook with growls and shouts. The officer's spear glowed faint, trembling in his grip as the cub stood between him and the woman. Their golden eyes blazed in the moonlight, teeth bared, tails flicking in warning. Outside, the streets of Kairos were no longer quiet. The clash had been heard. Lanterns burned like fireflies. Voices rose like a storm. Some cried for her protection. Others demanded her death. The city was no longer watching. It was choosing. The officer spat, his rage boiling. "You think they will save you? They are beasts. They will die like beasts." He raised the spear high, stepping forward. His soldiers moved with him, blades drawn, but the cubs moved faster. The largest slammed into the officer's chest, knocking him against the wall. The spear clattered, its glow flickering. Another cub leapt at a soldier's arm, tearing the blade from his hand. The smallest darted forward, sharp teeth snapping, driving the second soldier back. The officer staggered, his armor dented, his pride bleeding. His voice broke into a snarl. "They are corrupted. She has poisoned them." The woman's voice rang clear, steady, and calm, louder than the chaos. "No, they are not poisoned. They are free, and you cannot accept that because you never understood what freedom means." The words struck harder than the cub's claws. For a moment, even the guards at the doorway hesitated. Their eyes flicked between her calm figure and the officer's fury, between the cub's fierce loyalty and the fear that choked their commander. The eldest counselor arrived, his robe sweeping behind him. Guards and citizens pressed at his back. He saw the officer pinned against the wall, the cubs standing firm, the woman unbroken. His staff struck the stone floor, the sound booming like thunder. "Enough!" his voice roared, echoing through the tower. The chaos froze. The cubs held their growls, watching, waiting. The officer tried to stand tall, his voice desperate. "Elder, you must see. She bends them, she breaks our order, she has a threat to everything." The eldest counselor's gaze swept over the scene, his eyes deep, unreadable. He looked at the cubs, at their steady golden stare. Then he looked at the woman, calm even in the storm. Finally, he turned his eyes on the officer. "They do not follow her because of power," the elder said slowly. "They follow because they choose. You saw it, we all saw it. And if they choose her, then perhaps we must learn why. Perhaps it is not she who is dangerous, but we who have forgotten how to be chosen." The officer's face twisted, his voice breaking into a snarl. "You are blind. If you allow this, then all of Kairos will change, everything will fall." The elder's voice grew heavy, final. Perhaps it must. The people at the door gasped, their whispers swirled, some with awe, some with fear. But all knew the truth. The world they had known was no longer the same. The officer roared, ripping free his broken spear. He lunged, desperate, his blade of light aimed at the woman's heart, but he never reached her. The cubs struck as one. A wall of fur and fang and fire. They slammed into him, his cry torn from his throat. The spear shattered against the stone floor. Sparks burst like dying stars. The officer crumpled, his body broken, his fury silenced. The chamber fell into silence. The only sound was the steady breath of the cubs, their bodies pressed close around the woman. The eldest counselor raised his staff high, his voice carried not just to the chamber, but to the streets below. "Let it be known, the cubs of Kairos have chosen freely. They have chosen a human. They have chosen compassion. They have chosen truth." The people outside roared, some in fear, others in wild, breathless wonder. The sound shook the city, echoing across its stone walls. The woman placed her hand gently on the largest cub's head. Her voice calm, but her words carried. They don't follow, they choose, and they will choose again, just as all should. The cubs leaned against her, their golden eyes fierce but soft with trust. And in that moment, Kairos changed. The council could no longer deny what all had seen. The officer's death was not murder, it was choice. The cub's loyalty was not forced, it was chosen. Whispers spread like fire to the farthest corners of the galaxy. The story of a human in Kairos and the cubs who chose her. It was a story that no ruler, no council, no army could contain. For once the galaxy understood that loyalty could not be commanded, only earned. Nothing would ever be the same again.